The alien fleet descended upon Earth like an unstoppable storm. The invaders, a proud and technologically advanced race known as the Trion, had conquered countless worlds across the galaxy. To them, humans were insignificant, a species that had barely stepped into space. Their leaders laughed at the thought of resistance. Earth, they believed, would be an easy victory. The Trion ships landed in the middle of major cities, their sleek metallic designs towering over human structures. Crowds of frightened people watched in terror as the aliens marched out, their tall, lean bodies encased in shimmering armor. Each soldier carried weapons that looked far more advanced than anything Earth's armies possessed. The message was clear: surrender or perish. But something unexpected happened. The moment the Trion soldiers set foot on Earth, they faltered. Their movements were clumsy, their once graceful strides reduced to sluggish stomps. Some stumbled and fell, struggling to rise under the weight of their own armor. Their confident postures crumbled as Earth's gravity pulled them down like invisible chains. General Kyle, the Trion commander, watched in frustration as his troops struggled to stand. He activated his communicator, barking orders to the fleet above. Adjust the suits. Increase the power output. But no adjustment could counter the crushing force of Earth's gravity. What the Trion had failed to consider was that Earth's gravity was far stronger than that of their homeworld. Their slender bodies, designed for low-gravity environments, were no match for this unseen enemy. Humans, initially paralyzed with fear, began to notice the invaders' struggles. In the chaos, a young woman named Sarah, a mechanical engineer, observed the scene from her apartment window. Her mind raced. "They can't handle the gravity," she muttered. Her observations spread quickly among the civilians. Soon, whispers turned into ideas, and ideas turned into action. While the world's governments scrambled to respond to the invasion, ordinary people took matters into their own hands. Farmers, construction workers, and students came together, using their surroundings to fight back. Heavy objects, rocks, steel beams, and even abandoned vehicles were rolled toward the struggling aliens. Each makeshift attack slowed them down further. Trion soldiers who were once seen as invincible were now helpless against Earth's simplest weapons. Meanwhile, Sarah and a group of local engineers devised a bold plan. Using her knowledge of physics, she realized that the Trion's weakness lay not just in their inability to adapt, but in their reliance on their advanced technology. If they could disable the aliens' powered exosuits, the gravity would do the rest. Working through the night, Sarah and her team rigged together EMP devices from old electronics. It wasn't perfect, but it didn't need to be. The next morning, the humans launched their first coordinated attack. As the Trion soldiers trudged through the streets, Sarah's team activated the EMP devices. Sparks flew as the aliens' armor powered down, leaving them completely exposed to Earth's crushing gravity. Unable to move, they fell like toppled statues. The once mighty invaders were now prisoners of the very planet they had sought to conquer. General Kyle, watching from his command ship, realized the situation was spiraling out of control. He ordered an emergency evacuation. Retreat to the ships. Regroup in orbit. But even retreat was difficult. Trion transport vessels, designed for low-gravity takeoffs, struggled to lift off under Earth's pull. Many crashed before leaving the ground. The Trion fleet retreated into space, leaving their defeated soldiers behind. Humanity let out a collective sigh of relief. But the victory was bittersweet. Cities lay in ruins, and countless lives had been lost. Still, humans had proven something extraordinary. They were far stronger than anyone had imagined. In the aftermath of the invasion, Sarah became a symbol of Earth's resilience. Her quick thinking and ingenuity had turned the tide of the battle. Standing amidst the rubble of her city, she addressed the survivors. "We were underestimated," she said, "but we're stronger than we look. Earth is not just our home, it's our greatest weapon." Far above, in the depths of space, General Kyle stared at the blue planet on his screens. His pride was shattered, and his mind raced with questions. How could a species so seemingly weak have outsmarted and overpowered them? For the first time, he felt fear not of humans, but of Earth itself. He issued a warning to his fleet: stay away from this planet. It fights back. Back on Earth, humanity began rebuilding, stronger and more united than ever. The scars of the invasion would remain, but so would the lessons learned. They had faced an enemy far more advanced and had emerged victorious not because of superior technology, but because of their adaptability, their resilience, and the hidden power of their planet. And so, Earth stood tall, its gravity pulling not just invaders, but also the hopes of humanity closer together. The story of the Tryon invasion became a legend, a reminder to all who dared to underestimate the people of Earth. Strength isn't just about technology, it's about survival. The Tryon fleet hovered above Earth, a gleaming armada of massive ships that darkened the skies. The aliens had arrived with one purpose: to conquer. For centuries, the Tryon had dominated weaker species, expanding their empire across countless planets. Humanity, in their eyes, was no different. A small, fragile race with primitive technology, Earth would fall in days. The first wave of Tryon soldiers descended into Earth's cities, their confidence unshaken. These tall, silver-skinned beings, armored in sleek, reflective suits, marched in perfect formation. Civilians screamed and scattered as the invaders spread out, their weapons glowing with an ominous hum. The Tryon expected no resistance, and why would they? Humans, they thought, were too weak to fight back. But then something strange happened. The Tryon soldiers began to falter. Their confident strides became slow, awkward steps. Some stumbled, others fell to their knees, their weapons slipping from their hands. Earth's gravity, much stronger than that of their homeworld, was taking its toll. For the first time, the invincible Tryon felt powerless. General Orc, the leader of the invasion, watched from his command ship. "Why are they struggling?" he barked, his voice echoing in the metallic chamber. His officers scrambled to find answers, but none could explain how such a weak planet was bringing their elite forces to their knees. Meanwhile, on the ground, humans quickly noticed the aliens' difficulty. At first, people thought it was some kind of trick-ploy to lure them into a false sense of security. But as more Tryon soldiers collapsed under the weight of their armor, it became clear Earth's gravity was their weakness. In a small town, a group of survivors gathered in a mechanic's garage, whispering about what they had seen. Among them was Daniel, a former soldier who had been discharged after an injury, and Elena, a high school science teacher with a passion for physics. "They're struggling to move," Daniel said, pacing as he spoke. "Their own armor is too heavy for them here." Elena nodded thoughtfully. "Their bodies aren't built for this gravity. They've evolved for something much lighter. That gives us an advantage." "But how do we fight them?" another man asked, his voice shaking. "They still have weapons technology we can't even understand." Elena glanced at the tools scattered across the garage and smiled. "We don't need to understand their technology. We just need to outsmart them." The group got to work. Using heavy chains, steel beams, and car parts, they began building crude traps. Their plan was simple: exploit the aliens' inability to handle the weight. They rigged nets weighted with concrete blocks, set up rolling barriers made from old tires filled with sand, and even created slingshots capable of launching rocks with devastating force. It wasn't much, but it was all they had. As night fell, the group launched their first attack. A squad of Tryon soldiers had set up camp near the town, their glowing lights visible in the distance. Daniel and a few others crept close, dragging a weighted net behind them. With careful precision, they released it. The soldiers struggled, their movements slow and clumsy. By the time they freed themselves, it was too late. The humans had already taken their weapons and disappeared into the night. The attack sent shockwaves through the Tryon ranks. General Orc, now furious, ordered his remaining troops to crush the resistance. But the more the Tryon advanced, the more they struggled. Earth's gravity wasn't just pulling them down, it was breaking their spirits. Their machines malfunctioned, their drones crashed, and their once formidable army began to dwindle. Back in the town, Elena and Daniel worked tirelessly with the survivors. Each day, their traps grew more sophisticated, their tactics more daring. They ambushed patrols, sabotaged supply lines, and lured the Tryon into areas where the terrain worked against them. Hills, forests, and even rivers became weapons in the humans' arsenal. But the Trion weren't ready to give up. General Auric unleashed his final weapon, a massive walker, a towering machine designed to withstand any environment. It stomped through the town, destroying buildings and scattering the resistance. For a moment, it seemed as though the Trion would finally win. But Elena had one last idea. "The walker's weight is its weakness," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos. "If we can lure it onto the old bridge, the gravity will do the rest." The plan was risky, but there was no other choice. Daniel and a small team baited the walker, firing stolen Trion weapons to draw its attention. The massive machine lumbered after them, each step shaking the ground. As it reached the bridge, the structure groaned under its immense weight. The humans had lined the bridge with explosives, and as soon as the walker reached the center, Elena triggered the detonator. The explosion shattered the supports, and the bridge collapsed. The walker fell into the canyon below, its massive frame crushed by the very gravity the Trion had underestimated. The humans cheered, their victory hard-won but undeniable. Far above, General Auric stared at the blue planet on his monitors. He clenched his fists, fury and humiliation burning in his chest. "Retreat," he growled. "This planet is a death trap." As the Trion fleet fled, Earth stood victorious. The humans, once seen as weak, had proven their strength, not through technology, but through ingenuity and determination. The weight of the fight had been heavy, but in the end, it was the Trion who couldn't carry it. And Earth? It remained unbroken, a testament to the resilience of its people and the power of the unseen forces that protect it. The sky above Earth was no longer a calm blue. It was filled with the heavy silhouettes of alien ships, their dark forms blocking out the sun. The Zorath, a technologically advanced alien race, had arrived. Their fleet stretched across the sky like a shadow, hovering silently above Earth's major cities. They had come to claim the planet, confident that no one could stand against them. For centuries, the Zorath had conquered countless worlds, bending them to their will. They expected Earth to be no different. As the alien forces descended, they released their shock troops, tall, armored warriors who seemed invincible. They stepped out of their ships with ease, their heavy boots making no sound on the ground. The Zorath were prepared for battle, their weapons powerful and their technology unmatched. The humans on Earth watched in terror, knowing that this would likely be the end. But something unexpected happened. The moment the Zorath soldiers made contact with the ground, they began to struggle. Their movements slowed, and their bodies seemed to tremble under the weight of their own armor. The heavy boots that had once been able to crush any surface with ease now sank into the earth, as if the ground itself was resisting them. The Zorath's advanced weapons and technology were still working, but their physical forms were no match for Earth's gravity. General Varric, the leader of the Zorath invasion, stood in his command ship, watching the scene unfold. "What is happening?" he demanded. His voice was full of frustration. He had prepared for every scenario, but this one had not been part of the plan. He watched as his soldiers, their faces grimacing with effort, struggled to move. "Earth's gravity," said one of his officers, her voice tinged with shock. "It's too strong for them. Our suits weren't designed for this planet's weight." The Zorath had underestimated Earth's gravity, not realizing that it was far heavier than their own planet. Their technology was advanced, but it couldn't change the fundamental laws of nature. Earth's gravity was pulling them down, and there was no way to stop it. On the ground, humans began to notice the Zorath's struggles. At first, they were unsure what was happening. But as the aliens stumbled and faltered, the people of Earth realized something crucial. The invaders were weaker than they had ever thought. People who had once feared the alien might now saw an opening, a chance to fight back. In a small town, a group of survivors gathered. They had witnessed the aliens' weakness firsthand, and a plan began to form. Among them was Jason, a former army sergeant, and Mia, a scientist with a sharp mind for problem-solving. "We can use this," Jason said, his voice filled with determination. "We need to find a way to turn their weakness against them." Mia nodded. "Their suits are too heavy. If we can make them move slower or even cause their armor to malfunction, we can gain the upper hand." The group began to work quickly, using whatever they could find. Cars, pipes, ropes, and even rocks from the nearby mountains were used to craft traps. It wasn't much, but it was all they had. They knew they had to act fast before the Zorth adapted. The first ambush came at dawn. Jason and his team set up a series of large rocks along a narrow street where the Zorath were expected to pass. As the alien soldiers marched forward, their movements became more sluggish. The humans used the environment to their advantage, rolling the rocks into their path. The Zorath soldiers stumbled, their heavy armor making it difficult to recover. One by one, they were taken down, unable to move quickly enough to retaliate. The Zorath were not used to being outsmarted. They were trained to conquer, not to fight on an unfamiliar planet. General Varek, watching from his ship, ordered more soldiers to land. "Crush them," he commanded. "Show them the might of the Zorath." But the more they fought, the more the Zorath realized that gravity was not something they could easily overcome. Their soldiers continued to slow down, and their advanced vehicles, which were meant to hover, began to sink into the earth. Every movement became a struggle, and the strength they once relied on seemed to diminish with each passing moment. The humans, however, grew bolder. With each victory, they pushed harder. Using simple tactics like setting traps, ambushing the Zorath in areas where the terrain made it harder for them to move, the humans gained the upper hand. Cities that had once been under siege were now seeing Zorath soldiers retreating in defeat. The Zorath had been crushed by a force they couldn't understand or fight. Earth's gravity. As the final battle loomed, General Varek knew it was over. His forces had been defeated, and there was no way to turn things around. The gravity of Earth had become the ultimate weapon. With a heavy heart, he ordered his fleet to retreat. "We have underestimated them," he said bitterly. "We are not the conquerors we thought we were." The Zorath retreated, their fleet disappearing into space. Earth, against all odds, had won. The people who had once been terrified now stood united, proud of what they had accomplished. They had fought back not with superior weapons or technology, but with the power of the planet itself. In the aftermath, Jason and Maya stood together, looking out over the city they had helped save. "They came here expecting to win," Mia said, "but they didn't understand the one thing that made us stronger than they could ever imagine." "Earth is a force of nature," Jason replied, "and no one can fight against nature." The victory was bittersweet, as many had fallen in the fight. But the humans had proven that no matter how advanced an enemy might be, they could never defeat the strength of a planet that fought back. Earth's gravity had crushed the invaders, and the humans, once seen as weak, stood victorious. The sky was split wide open, and a rumbling sound echoed through the air as the alien ships entered Earth's atmosphere. These invaders, known as the Andrax, were a race that had conquered planets far beyond the stars. Their ships were vast, and their warriors were mighty, each one armored in gleaming, indestructible suits. The Andrax were ruthless, and they believed that no world could stand against their power. But Earth, they were sure, would be an easy conquest. The Andrax fleet hovered over the planet, their ships casting dark shadows over Earth's cities. They deployed their soldiers with precision, marching into the heart of human civilization without a hint of fear. To them, humans were nothing more than insects to be crushed. But what the Andrax did not understand was that their strength would be tested in ways they could not predict. The first wave of Andrax soldiers descended into the streets, their heavy boots hitting the ground with a deep thud. The humans watched in silence, paralyzed with fear as the invaders advanced. But as the Andrax began to march, something strange began to happen. They slowed down. Their once quick movements became heavy, awkward. Some soldiers collapsed under the weight of their own armor, while others stumbled, trying to regain their balance. At first, the humans thought it was a trick, some kind of weapon the Andrax had used to disorient them. But as the seconds passed, it became clear. The Andrax were not struggling because of any trick. They were struggling because Earth's gravity, something they had never considered, was too much for them to handle. Far above, in the Andrax command ship, General Rorak stood in disbelief, watching his soldiers falter. "What is happening?" he demanded. "Why can't they move?" One of his officers quickly ran up to him, her face pale. "General, it's the gravity. Our suits were designed for a much lighter planet." The gravity here is crushing them. Rorak's fists clenched. The Andrax had underestimated the simple yet powerful force of Earth's gravity. Their suits, which had been designed to withstand the forces of distant worlds, were now a hindrance. They were too heavy, too cumbersome, and the weight of Earth's gravity was too much for their bodies to handle. Down below, the humans watched in awe. They saw the Andrax soldiers struggling, their powerful armor no longer an advantage but a burden. Something sparked in the hearts of the humans. This was their chance. They had no advanced technology, no powerful weapons like the Andrax, but they had something the invaders did not: the knowledge of their own planet. In a small town, a group of civilians led by a former scientist named Lily gathered together in a hidden workshop. They had seen the Andrax soldiers faltering, and they knew they had to act fast. "We need to use this," Lily said, her voice steady with determination. "We can't fight them with force, but we can use their weakness against them." Lily and her team quickly set to work. They scoured the town, gathering whatever they could. Pipes, steel rods, chains, and even broken vehicles became their tools. They began to build traps, things that would make it even harder for the Andrax to move, to escape the crushing force of Earth's gravity. The first trap was simple, a giant net made from scrap metal and old ropes. They rigged it up across a narrow street where they knew the Andrax soldiers would pass. As the first group of soldiers came down the street, they couldn't move fast enough to avoid it. The net dropped, and several soldiers were caught in it, unable to free themselves from the weight of the earth pulling them down. The humans moved fast, using the confusion to their advantage. They rolled boulders into the streets, set up barriers made from old cars, and used anything they could find to create more obstacles. Each time the Andrax soldiers tried to push forward, the humans were ready. The invaders, who once looked unstoppable, were now trapped by the very gravity they had failed to understand. General Rorak watched as his forces continued to struggle, but he refused to believe that his mighty army could be defeated by something as simple as gravity. He sent more soldiers down, but they only met the same fate. The Andrax found themselves weighed down, unable to move, their technology failing to overcome the power of Earth itself. As the battle raged on, the humans became more organized. They used their environment to their advantage: narrow alleyways, hills, and rivers. The Andrax heavy armor was a liability in these areas, and they were quickly worn down. Human ingenuity, fueled by desperation, began to outsmart the invaders at every turn. Lily and her team worked tirelessly, coordinating attacks and traps. They even hacked into the Andrax's communication systems, broadcasting messages that confused and distracted the enemy. The Andrax soldiers, once invincible in their high-tech suits, began to question their own strength. They were not the conquerors they had once believed themselves to be. As the final push came, General Rorak knew his forces were defeated. The Andrax had been outmaneuvered, outsmarted, and overwhelmed by the very gravity they had overlooked. His last order came with a deep sense of failure. "Retreat," he said quietly. "We are not prepared for this planet. We are not prepared for Earth." The remaining Andrax forces retreated back into the sky, leaving behind the remnants of their once mighty army. Earth had stood its ground. The humans had proven that they were not weak. They were the guardians of their planet. In the days that followed, the people of Earth stood together, proud of their victory. They had not won through power or weapons, but by using the planet's greatest strength, the force that held them all down. Earth's gravity had crushed the invaders, and in doing so, it had brought humanity together in ways they had never imagined. Lily stood at the edge of the battlefield, looking at the horizon. "We may not have advanced weapons," she said, her voice full of conviction, "but we have something far stronger. We have Earth on our side." And Earth, it seemed, had never been more powerful. The stars above Earth had always seemed peaceful, like a distant dream. But on one quiet evening, that peace was shattered. A massive alien fleet appeared in the sky, blocking out the stars like an endless sea of dark metal. The invaders, known as the Creel, had come to claim Earth for their own. They were an advanced species, capable of destroying entire worlds. Their ships were faster than anything humanity had ever seen, and their weapons could vaporize a city with a single blast. The Creel had conquered planets across the galaxy, and they believed Earth would be an easy addition to their empire. They had studied the planet from afar and knew it was inhabited by what they considered weak, primitive beings, humans. With their advanced technology, they saw no challenge. The Creel fleet descended, their ships thundering through the atmosphere, prepared for what they believed would be a swift and easy victory. However, as the first wave of Creel soldiers hit the ground, they quickly realized something was wrong. Their ships, designed to hover above any planet's surface, began to sink, slowly becoming trapped by the very soil beneath them. It was subtle at first, but the alien soldiers could feel it. The ground beneath them seemed unusually heavy, like they were wading through thick mud. They tried to push forward, but the weight of their armor grew unbearable. Every step felt heavier. "What is happening?" muttered Commander Zorak, the leader of the Creel forces, as he stood at the controls of his ship. His soldiers, all seasoned warriors, were struggling to walk, their advanced suits seemingly powerless against the pull of Earth's gravity. "We've landed in the wrong place, Commander," said an officer, her voice tight with panic. "The gravity here is too strong for our suits." Zorak's mind raced. His people had conquered planets much heavier than Earth. This shouldn't have been possible. "It can't be," he said, his voice growing more urgent. "Increase the power in their suits. We cannot lose to primitive creatures." But no matter how much power they added to their suits, the problem remained. Earth's gravity was simply too much. The Creel soldiers, once unstoppable, now found themselves weak and slow. Each movement became a struggle. Their weapons, which were supposed to be invincible, felt heavier in their hands. The terrain beneath them seemed to fight back, pushing them deeper into the ground. Far below, on the streets of a major city, the humans watched in disbelief as the invaders faltered. For a moment, they thought the situation was hopeless. The Creel's technology was far beyond anything humans had ever seen. But as they saw the invaders struggle, a sense of hope began to rise. Maybe, just maybe, there was a way to fight back. A small group of survivors, led by Marcus, a former soldier, and Nadia, a brilliant engineer, gathered in an underground bunker. They had seen what the Creel soldiers were experiencing, and they knew Earth's gravity could be the key to defeating them. "We've got to make this work," Marcus said, his voice steady but urgent. "We don't have much time before the Creel figure out what's going on." Nadia nodded. "If their suits can't handle Earth's gravity, then we need to find a way to make that problem worse. We don't have their weapons, but we have the planet itself." The survivors worked quickly, gathering supplies. They used scrap metal, rocks, and anything they could find to build makeshift traps. They set up barriers in key areas, using the natural landscape to their advantage. The goal was simple: force the Creel to fight in terrain that would only make their struggle harder. The humans couldn't match the Creel's advanced technology, but they could use Earth's gravity as a weapon. When the Creel soldiers marched into the city, they found their movement more difficult than ever. The streets were narrow and the buildings seemed to close in on them. Every step was an effort, and the gravity pulled them down further, dragging them into the very Earth they sought to conquer. Their boots sank deeper with each step, and their suits began to overheat from the strain. It didn't take long for the humans to strike. They had set up traps throughout the city. Large, heavy objects were dropped onto Creel soldiers, and the ground was rigged to make it even more difficult for the invaders to move. The Creel, once proud and confident, were now helpless. They stumbled and fell, struggling to rise from the ground that seemed to keep them trapped. "What is this?" Commander Zorak shouted, watching the chaos unfold from his ship. His soldiers were being picked off one by one. The humans, who had once seemed weak and insignificant, were now proving to be a formidable foe. "Sir, we need to retreat," his officer urged. "We cannot continue. The gravity here is too much for our forces." "No," Zorak replied fiercely. "We cannot retreat. The planet must be ours." But as the hours passed, the Creel realized the truth. They were not facing an enemy they could easily crush. They were facing Earth itself, a planet that had fought back against their invincible technology. The gravity, something they had never considered, was the planet's greatest weapon. It was a force they could not escape. The battle raged on, but with each passing minute, their armor was heavy, their weapons useless against the terrain, and their bodies strained under the relentless pull of Earth's gravity. They had never encountered a planet like this before, and they were unprepared for the fight. In the end, Commander Zorak was forced to make a choice. His fleet was losing, and his soldiers were being overwhelmed by Earth's gravity. He called for a retreat. "We cannot win here. We must leave," he said, his voice heavy with defeat. The Creel fleet began to lift off from Earth, their ships disappearing into the stars. The battle was over, and Earth had won not with superior technology or weapons, but with the very force of nature that had always been part of its existence. The humans stood together, victorious. They had faced an alien invasion, and through determination, ingenuity, and the power of their planet, they had triumphed. Earth had shown the Creel that no matter how advanced an enemy might be, they could never conquer a planet that fought back with everything it had. Marcus looked out over the city, a quiet sense of pride swelling in his chest. "We are the guardians of this planet," he said quietly, "and will always protect it." The planet had fought back, and Earth had proven that no one could ever underestimate its strength again.